When it comes to Call of Duty, I'm no stranger to Black Ops. I was a huge fan of the first game, and I also admit, I had a soft spot for Cold War as well. I always thought the Black Ops games were epic right down to the core, so when it came to the announcement of Black Ops 6 and how it would take the series to the 1990s, naturally, I was interested. However, I have to be honest, I was still hesitant to play the game due to the reaction of 2023's Modern Warfare 3, which I honestly passed on. That being said, I'll just say that I've been ready to dive into another recent game in the series for a while now. So with that, let's get into Black Ops 6. As a game co-developed by Treyarch and Raven Software with Activision as its publisher, Call of Duty 6 would release on October 25th, 2024 for the PlayStation 4 and 5, the Xbox One and Series X/X, and on Windows. Black Ops 6 would also be included on Game Pass upon its release as well, which is how I'll be playing this. It's also worth noting that the game dropped with pretty solid scores, and as of working on this video, has been nominated for multiple awards at the 2024 Game Awards, which includes things like Best Audio Design, Best Action Game, and Best Multiplayer Game. The game would end up becoming the biggest Call of Duty launch ever, going on to break Game Pass subscription records as well. This is another Call of Duty game with a bunch of different additions as well, so I'll try to break down all of them. But first, I'll mention that the game included a pre-order bonus, which, outside of early access to the game's beta, would give players the Woods Operator Pack for Modern Warfare 3, Warzone, Warzone Mobile, and Black Ops 6, which also gave people the classic Woods, Zombie Woods, and Numbers Woods Operator skins. In addition to that, players would also obtain the Reflect 115 Camo Pack, again, available for Modern Warfare 3, Warzone, and Warzone Mobile as well. This thing also included 3 legendary Aether tools, 3 flawless Aetherium crystals, and 3 ray gun weapon cases that could be used in zombies. There was also the inclusion of a Vault Edition, which included the Hunters vs. Hunted Operator Pack, which was multiple skins for usage in the multiplayer game modes, the Mastercraft Weapon Collection, which included a bunch of different Mastercraft weapons, the Black Cell Battle Pass Bundle, something that would unlock Black Cell content and give players Call of Duty points, 20 Battle Pass tier skips, and the full Season 1 Battle Pass. And lastly, there's the Gobblegum Pack for zombies, which gave players in-game bonuses and effects. It's also worth noting that the digital additions to the game included cross-gen bundles that would allow buyers to own the respective PS4 and PS5 or the Xbox Series X and Xbox One versions. There would also be the inclusion of third-party peripherals for the game, like this Corsair keyboard and this Field Op Edition controller for the PS4 and 5 and PC, and this Xbox Series X Black Ops 6 console wrap, as well as some wireless controllers. So now with everything out of the way, let's get into Black Ops 6, shall we? If you don't want to hear any of this and want to avoid a full-on recap, feel free to skip to the provided timestamp. Black Ops 6 begins with a cutscene introducing us to the characters and settings of the game, as we hear things like Ronald Reagan quote to signal the opening of the Berlin Wall, and the end of the Cold War, as well as the beginning to Operation Desert Storm in 1991. We see the Black Ops 6 title, and then we go into this scene with a dude named Livingstone interviewing our crew, which leads us finding out that a group called Pantheon compromised their mission in Kuwait. This is followed by Marshall explaining what exactly happened when the scene cuts to Kuwait, 1991, when we see Case, the dude we mostly play as in the game, Harrow, and Marshall overlooking a convoy. We learn here that a dude named Malawi has paid good money to get himself out of the Middle East when we find out we're going to nab him. This has a USAF pilot being called in to blow stuff up when we head in with the mission Bishop Takes Rook, officially starting with us going in to locate Alawi. We go on, finding the dude in a black truck, then we go on to question him when he tells us that he has a deal with the CIA and that we're supposed to get him out. When we see some helicopters flying by, and then he mentions the group Pantheon, who are explained as a multinational, heavily armed paramilitary force in the following scene. We also learn that Alawi was actually killed as well when we switch back to playing, going on to reach Rally Point Echo, where we make it to a cliff and jump over to slide down to a truck, where we see Adler come out and blast Alawi.
No, 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 no!
Adler!
Stand down!
Wait till Woods gets a load of this. Goddamn Russell Adler, CIA traitor. He been on the run, what, 10 months?
Marshall, Woods' new project. You can ease up, son. I'm all done here. Jane,
You just killed a high-value target in cold blood and put our national security at risk.
Alawi can't fall into the Pantheon's hands. Or Langley's. The CIA is compromised. But it's not me. I'm just the fall guy.
So after Adler explains the situation on why he killed Alawi, along with the Bishop Takes Rook message, this is followed by us going on and driving off while we're forced to drill a Pantheon helicopter with a rocket, which also ends the level. The following scene, we learn that Adler was a mole who betrayed them in Panama and was responsible for Wood's condition, with Livingstone going on to ask Woods what Bishop Takes Rook means. Wood says that he doesn't have any idea, which leads to Livingstone suspending the team on the account that they were withholding information. Harrow then tells Marshall and Woods to go to her office, where she asks if they're holding out on her. However, Woods says nothing. This goes on to a following scene where Marshall explains that Woods did in fact know what Adler meant as we head to the Rook, which is an abandoned KGB safe house in Bulgaria. Marshall goes on to say that Adler was chasing rumors of the group Pantheon, who he believed were taking orders from somewhere in the CIA, and that they were developing a new type of weapon. This begins with us inside the intermission level, the Rook arrival, where we learn that we're gonna find someone named Savanti Dumas, whom Adler had been in contact with, while Marshall goes to Munich to find someone named Felix. This has us beginning the next level, titled Blood Feud, where we're to investigate a Pantheon lead in Avalon while helping Savanti Dumas complete her mission. The following scene has Woods explaining that Adler hired Savanti to follow a Pantheon trial and that we're to join her. We begin this level at Avalon besides a payphone when Sev contacts us saying that we need to listen in on a dude named Yannick's call with the Pantheon and that we're to take him out after. This leads us heading up to a nearby bell tower in order to eliminate the dude after we eavesdrop on his conversation that connects the CIA and Pantheon. After this, we go to regroup at Sev's van, learning that we're about to go crash a party and kill some guild members. However, in order to do so, we'll need to surrender ourselves to getting close. We then gear up and leave the van, finding a way into the restaurant to reach its safe room. Once we're there, we surrender to the guild and then we're brought to a room with the people we gotta drop.
Timetable's moved up. I want the shipment sent tonight.
You CIA types are all the same. And this one? Troublemaker.
What's going on in there?
We have a visitor. Walked right into the lion's den. Alone.
Uninvited.
Maybe this one works for a rival, huh? Or maybe Pantheon is trying to squeeze us.
We came to you, Sadie.
We learn the truth one way or another.
Show me your visitor.
Go ahead.
Well, look at that. You're a long way from home, Case. This man is extremely dangerous. Kill him immediately.
Caminado.
So at this scene, we see the guild having a conversation with a Pantheon contact who recognizes Case, and then Sev kills Aminata while Asadi and Seeger escape. This is followed by a section where we have to chase down and drop them both. First, we take down Seeger, and then we see Asadi try to make an escape, but... So his limo flips over here, and Asadi's death is confirmed when the level ends with us going back to the safe house with Sev. This is followed by a scene with Marshall saying Savanti and a tech genius named Felix Newman both agreed to join them, with Felix also assisting and helping them find out Adler's location. This begins the Rook Assemble, where we learn that Felix was able to find out Adler was in a DC blacksmith underneath Capitol Station. This then goes on to the mission Most Wanted, where we're to rescue Adler from a CIA black site. The next scene has Felix and Marshall explaining the situation with the political event being held, where we learn that Senator Jack McKenna has security clearance to the site, which we can get access to by obtaining his retinal scan by using a camera. The level then begins, and we go on to enter the gala, seeing Harrow inside, who tells Case that Langley set up a team to track them all down. We continue on from here to meet with Sev, using her camera to get a shot of Senator McKenna. She gives us a map after, and then we choose a covert affair where we go on to speak with the senator's wife, who we confront about there being tension between the two. She then tells us that if we want access to the senator, then we should go find his aide, Anne Johansson. We go on from here to the auction hall and then use our camera to eavesdrop on Anne's conversation with some dude, discovering that McKenna and her have a sex tape, which ends up with her giving the dude a valet ticket to go and fetch from his car. We then go and steal the valet ticket and then get the key for the car for ourselves, finding the tape and the photo in the trunk when the dude comes out of nowhere, surprising us when we knock him out and toss him in the trunk. We then head back to the senator's wife and give her the tape so that we could get a picture of McKenna. We go on to confront Anne about the tape when the senator's wife comes out, and we see Anne getting stabbed with a needle when we give her the tape, allowing us to get McKenna's retinal scan in the process. After this, we go to the roof of the building to rendezvous with our team. However, we get caught.
Put your hands up, slowly. Got a 1014 in R1, requesting backup.
10-4.
Hey, that's close enough. Don't take another step.
Do we have a problem here?
Sir, I just found...
Why don't you just let it through? That's one hell of a hit.
So Seven Marshall saved the day and we suit up, heading into Black Site via an elevator shaft to rescue Adler, finding out that Pantheon had attacked the place first. We go on through the place, eventually coming across a door that we open up by using an RCXD to blow up a power box with. After we do this, we go in and save Adler.
Easy, Adler. We're here to help.
Guess Woods got my message.
The old man says you're worth it. Better be right. Seth, we got the prize.
Good. Now get out. Fast. We've got party crashes up here.
Great. You good to go?
Am now.
Once we get Adler, we go to make our escape, taking out this big dude and then climbing out through the elevator shaft that we used to enter. However, this explosion happens, and then we get a QTE, which leads to us now needing to find an alternative escape route where we yoink this dude's eye out and then get to a point where we hop on some bikes, blasting away at enemies before hopping onto a SWAT van with Seven in the back, which ends the level. The next scene, we see Harrow being contacted by Marshall, who tells her that Pantheon was at the Black Site and that the CIA is compromised. We discover here that the group's made a most wanted list as well, with Marshall ending the call by asking Harrow to look into Livingstone. This is followed by the next section, the Rook Reunion. Adler tells the group that Alawi knew of the Pantheon presence in Iraq, and that they had a technology exchange going on with Saddam Hussein that had given the latter access to an experimental weapon called the Cradle, which is now located in a bunker at Saddam's palace. The next level, hunting season, were to help the SAS in Iraq in exchange for accessing Saddam's palace. The next scene, we see that the coalition forces launching Operation Desert Storm is complicating things since they're destroying strategic locations, with Saddam's palace being one of them. We learn here that Adler reached out to Helen Park for help, and that we're going to help the SAS clear Scud launchers in order to get to the palace. This officially begins hunting season, where we're going on to reach a Scud launcher site, and then we blow it up. After this, we're time jumped forward, where Park gives us a TAC map with locations of random objectives, including the location of the Scud sites. It's worth mentioning that during this section, we also have a bunch of different side objectives that we could assist Gladney with as well. This includes destroying SAM sites, clearing encampments, and finding intel. But anyways, once we drop every last Scud launcher, we go back to Gladney where we initiate the mission to go on to Saddam's palace. This scene shows our dudes heading off with some choppers as we go on to this scene where there's an exchange where we learn that we're going on to find a bunker and that once we're done, the palace is gonna get blown up. This begins the mission The Cradle, where we're storming Saddam's palace with the objective of finding his bunker. We make it to the end of the palace, eventually making our way inside the bunker itself, where we search the area, finding a box with a sample of the Cradle. We also hear from Adler that the Cradle had come from an American research facility. After this, we go to regroup with the SAS and clear an exfil zone, going on to board a helicopter as the palace gets blown away.
Come on, target is yours. Confirmed. Incoming.
Enjoy the view.
Going out the bank, Mark.
You've been saving that one, haven't you?
It's good seeing you again.
Well, look at that, Adler. We actually agree on something.
This next scene, Marshall says that the Pantheon has a bioweapon with the name of a Soviet scientist named Matvey Gusev tied to it, and that he's in Iraq. This next part is titled The Rook Reconciliation, where we see Marshall ask Felix about cracking a disc that Adler had found. Not much else otherwise, so we just go on to the next mission, which is called Emergence, where we're trying to locate the source of the cradle. The next scene, we hear that Adler believes that the Pantheon were able to gain access to a military research facility called Advanced Technologies and Applications in eastern Kentucky, and our goal is to find the biotechnology wing. We begin the level with Marshall and Case going into an elevator. However, the elevator falls, which causes Case to grab onto a ladder, which also falls, breaking his mask and compromising him to a chemical in the air. This leads to him to go and locate the entrance of biotechnology. But first, we gotta find a tool to open a nearby door. Case goes onto an elevator to biotechnology, finding out that it's closed off when he starts tripping seeing zombies. After this, he goes on to take a phone call as he starts tripping out hearing voices with a new objective of finding director keycards. Along the way, we take phone calls learning some backstory that Case may have been a test subject and that the cradle was supposed to make people stronger and faster, but it can also cause behavioral changes. We also learn that Case and whomever the voice is had sabotaged the facility as well, which led to Livingstone shutting down the cradle program and dissolving the Pantheon branch of the CIA, after which Case and the voice being rehabilitated afterwards. But anyways, after going back and using all the key cards and opening the way to the elevator, we continue on to biotechnology. However, we pick up one last phone where we learn that Case was never to speak of the cradle program, and then we have to fight some zombies, which leads to Case getting ripped up after, coming to with Marshall helping him up. We learn here that Pantheon took a batch of the cradle, which we learn is a hallucinogen, and then we get out of there, ending the level. The following scene here has the group seeing footage of the now cracked disc, with it showing Harrow overlooking some test subjects going at it. This leads to the Rook recovery, where we learn that a part of the safe house collapsed into the water. After this, we go to Felix, who had discovered a message from Gusev about something called Fusina and the number B24. We're told here that Fusina is the alias for Casino Lutazi, who we go to find out are an Avalon faction with ties to the Pantheon. As for B24, we're not sure of just yet. However, Felix says he has a contact who might be able to shed light on it. After this, we can start the mission High Rollers, where we're to find out what the Pantheon is keeping in Casino Lutazi's archive room. In the following scene, we learn that B24 refers to a safe deposit box that's contained within Castle Lutazi's archive room, and that the Pantheon is funding their research through laundered casino money, and whatever's in the box might lead them to Gusev. So basically, we gotta get into the vault to override the archive room security in order to allow Case to access the box. But first, he'll need to get captured to get close. The mission basically has the team working together, so you end up having to switch between everyone, starting with Marshall, who we see in the beginning go and buy some chips. The objective here is for Marshall to get access to the High Rollers Lounge, but first, we gotta go acquire some playing cards from Sev to gain a little advantage at poker, and then go on to play. After this, we switch to Case, where we need to tap some junction boxes to let Wood see in on the place. Once we do this, we go on and get ourselves captured. So we go on to switch back to Marshall now, cheating to win at poker and obtaining a bar in the process that allows us to gain entrance to the High Rollers Lounge. After gaining entrance, we go and plant a bug on a slot machine and then trigger a jackpot. This lets us steal a key from a pit boss, which Marshall hands off to Felix, who we use to go on to access a server room in order to reset some slot machines and reprogram the key card, which he delivers to Sev after. So now we switch to Sev here, going on to access a vault security panel in a high security area, where we unlock an elevator and then deposit some weapons in a storage, going on to blow the vault after. This is followed by us defending Felix until this moment where we gotta push a cart with C4 in order to drop some enemies, which then switches us back to Case. Case here picks a lock and then drops some dude with a QTE before going on to the archive room, where we go on to access B24, finding a dossier inside. We go on to rendezvous with our team after, making our escape from the casino via boat, ending the level. This is followed by a scene where we're able to confirm that the Lutazis were moving Pantheon cash through the casino. And in addition to that, we were able to discover wire transfers to a lab in southern Iraq that were directed to Matvey Gusev. This next section is titled The Rook Contact, where we see a wholesome moment between our team members. However, this is short-lived as we learn from Adler that Gusev fled the lab, but there's a bright point in that he was able to obtain info from a scientist who told him that Gusev was heading to a Kuwaiti airport, which we also learn is in the middle of a war zone. However, Adler has a CENTCOM connection who might be willing to help us out. This is followed by the mission Ground Control, where we have the objective of capturing Gusev before he escapes Kuwait. We then see this cutscene with Adler asking Sims if he could get the group to Gusev. He agrees to get them close, and then this is followed by us going in via chopper with the mission officially beginning as we go out with the objective of capturing Gusev. However, we need to gain access to a heavily defended airport terminal first. Once we push on through, we go on through the place to get to Gusev's plane, eventually going on to secure it, finding out that it's empty after we reach the cockpit. We find out here that Gusev was being taken to a military cargo plane, which we ultimately head to after the cockpit of the plane is blasted. After which, going on to cross a tarmac where we hijack a tank and then use it to intercept Gusev's plane by blowing it up. We follow this up in the next scene by interrogating Gusev to get information out of him. We learn here that Gusev was being used to make the cradle stronger and that he knows where the weapon is. That place is Vorkuta. The following cutscene, we see that Sev is being sent into the base to sabotage defenses in order to allow the rest of the team to move in. This leads to the mission Under the Radar, where we begin as Sev, who surveys the base's defenses. This whole section is pretty much finding a way to disable a helicopter, a radar, and a SAM site. Once this is done, she goes onto a security station to access cameras in order to find the cradle. However, she discovers that the weapon's been moved, instead finding Harrow there. This is followed by a scene where we see Marshall saying that they aren't going to leave empty-handed and are going to go in and wreck the place and capture Harrow. This leads to us switching a case where we need to rendezvous with Sev by flying into the place and causing all sorts of chaos. And afterwards, we rappel in and move in on our objective of capturing Harrow. We head underground, eventually splitting off from the rest of our team when we finally run into our target. Luckily, the rest of our group comes in to save the day and capture Jane. The level here ends with a little chatter about getting her to talk as we fly away from Vorkuta. The following scene pretty much shows Marshall realizing that he doesn't believe that he knows who Harrow is anymore. This is followed by the Rook interrogation, where we discover that Jane had a tracker embedded in her forearm, which means that the Pantheon knows where she is. Since the group needs information out of her as quickly as possible, we find out that Adler has something up his sleeve to do so, with everyone making preparations for an incoming fight by fortifying the house. This is followed by the mission Separation Anxiety beginning, where we're to get Harrow to reveal the details of Pantheon's imminent attack. So anyways, this is followed by Adler injecting Jane with an MK Ultra variant called Separation in order to get her to squeal. This leads to a scene of Marshall communicating with Harrow, asking about the bioweapon as we begin playing as her, also discovering that she's at home where she finds a younger version of herself inside. This is where we see a little background with Jane's injured mom telling her to hide under a bed. She then goes on to examine a mirror, which breaks up as another part of her tries to make sure that she doesn't talk. This next section begins a scavenger hunt to find mirror shards in order to repair it as we head through Vorkuta trying to figure out the code to open a chest. Once we do so and get the shard here, Jane places it on the mirror and is brought back to another flashback where she goes out of the room to find her mom, who gets shot and killed as her dad drags her back into her room and into a closet. We then switch back to Harrow in a lab where she goes to grab the next shard, but instead falls down to a lower floor where she needs to power up 4 generators to get back up. She does this and then goes on to head up a lift to grab the second shard, which she puts on the mirror after. This is followed by another scene with her remembering her dad.
What is this? Who sent you? Wait! Wait!
I would only understand this moment years later.
So her dad gets killed by the intruder, and then after this, we switch to Case and begin Checkmate, where we need to buy Woods time to get information out of Harrow as we defend the safe house. This section actually ends with us blowing up an APC before we switch to Woods interrogating Harrow when we learn that everything was connected, which brings us back to separation anxiety, where we learn that Jane wanted closure for her parents. We're also informed that she had been promoted at Langley multiple times in order to find the truth, searching every archive room for information. However, her other self comes out, saying that she believed the CIA was hiding something before booting her back. This leads to a section where we gotta get to Jane's office with a little timer ticking away. Once we hit the spot, we see that someone slips a disc under Jane's door, leading us to need to crack it, finding a file called Operation Red Sweep with the name Emerson Black attached for a CIA order to kill Harrow's parents, and that it was all to be staged as a home invasion with someone very interesting being painted as the intruder.
The Pantheon. They had copies of my parents' records, entire histories, details of the operation that killed them. It was ordered by the CIA itself.
Sit rep.
Targets eliminated.
Anything else?
Negative. We're done here.
It was Adler. The man who takes you under his wing.
Adler? Bullshit. If it's true, that means your parents were double agents. Or worse.
Never!
So we learn here that she believes that Adler killed her parents when she ends up back in her office again, finding that there's corruption within the CIA with the Pantheon taking Harrow in. We also learn here that the Pantheon was gonna lead a false flag attack in order to pull the strings of a new world order. This leads to Woods asking Harrow how she even knew if it was the CIA who killed her parents when she switches back to being in her closet, hearing an entirely different person who wasn't Adler. This leads to her other self attacking her once again, and then we gotta do some shooting. Once this is over, Jane gets a final shard and then places it on the mirror when we switch back to Case again in Checkmate, where we're once again defending the place. However, we learn that they've gotten inside too as we head onto a bridge where we defend Felix as he goes and plants some charges to blow it up. Unfortunately, Felix is hit, which leads to Case having to go and help him, dragging him away as the bridge is blown up before an APC can run him over. We then switch back to Woods asking Harrow where the Pantheon's going to unleash the cradle as she examines the now intact mirror, seeing Avalon. This leads to us heading through the place to another mirror where Jane is hanging from a rope of a helicopter before she gets knocked off, having to make a jump to Woods. The next scene, Jane tells us that the cradle's in Washington, D.C. in the Capitol building, and that they're waiting on her word to release it. This event would cause Livingstone to be replaced for his inability to stop an attack on the Capitol and put Jane in charge, which would allow the Pantheon to control the CIA. This is followed by a switching back where we see Woods contacting Marshall about the location of the bioweapon when we see the Pantheon break into the room to save Jane. Jane stabs Woods here, and then we rush back to the safe house to save him, seeing that he was able to survive. Marshall then goes on and snipes Jane as we haul it to her helicopter.
Close it up! Oh, for God's sake! I shouldn't have protected any of you! I pushed Livingston for your suspension! I wanted you out of the way! You've done! I know what you really are, Case. The cradle made you this. You owe everything to the Pantheon. Destroyer. The cradle. Again. More. finish this. We have to get out of this.
So Jane accidentally shoots the pilot of the helicopter, causing it to crash as we finish her off, with Case becoming infected by the cradle, after which, hearing Marshall say that they were able to save the capital. However, Case's fate here is left unknown. This is followed by a scene with her crew meeting Livingstone.
Thanks for coming.
You getting medals or concrete boots?
Neither. But I can start with an apology.
Damn straight.
I'm not sure how you pulled it off, but it's not lost on me that you prevented one of the greatest catastrophes of our time.
So you want us back?
Something like that. Can we trust one another?
Working on it.
Right now you have something of great value. Anonymity. You're in the shadows.
No shit. We've always been in the shadows.
Not like this. Your reach is greater than it's ever been. We need you, Woods. All of you. I can provide whatever you need. Accommodations, resources, cash, additional manpower. All of it off the books.
I thought the Cold War was over. No more need for, what was it? Global gunslingers.
Yes. The Cold War may be over, but the world is more dangerous than it's ever been. The nature of our enemy is unclear now.
What do you want us to do about it?
What you've always done. Protect us. Harrow may be gone, but not the Pantheon. I need you back in Avalon.
You think it's still a threat?
I do. And worse. Whatever cabal brought Harrow into the Pantheon still lives inside our house. We thought they were long gone. But it turns out, they never left.
So right here, we learn that our team is going to be working in the shadows to find the remnants of the Pantheon who are still around even without Harrow. And then the game ends with this cliffhanger of a dude using a computer in Livingstone's office, which ends Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Summarizing my thoughts on the Black Ops 6 campaign story, I think it's alright. I had fun with it thanks to the gameplay for sure, but I'm not entirely sure about the theme or really the overall narrative. And the game ends with kind of a cliffhanger too, which I don't really know what to say about. Did Case die? And what's with this dude who people seem to think is an operator from the online named Jackson Kane? I'm not entirely sure what to make of it really. The game's real meat was the Gulf War related stuff with the Pantheon, who we don't even know the leader of or anything, being the only real villain. However, I think that not having a face tied to it makes it feel kind of underwhelming in some ways. Though I guess I wouldn't have expected Jane to be an antagonist of this story either, but I guess if anything, she mainly feels like a pawn and not really the overall mastermind here. The gameplay of Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is a bit different to me personally. Maybe it's because I've gone back and played the other games where things feel a bit more rigid, which made things like the movement take a bit to get used to. See, Black Ops 6 utilizes an omnidirectional movement, meaning you can do things like run backwards and stuff. It's pretty strange, but I think that I do like it. Though I have to admit, there's some light wobbliness to moving around, which I think is supposed to simulate a realism to some degree. However, I'll admit that it can feel slightly disorienting at first. Other than that, you can also do things like use people as body shields, something that I admittedly kind of liked. And in addition to that, you get these body armor things that you could pick up too, which is something you'll probably be even more familiar with if you mess around with Warzone. The game also differs from other entries as you now have armored mini-boss-esque enemies. These dudes are basically heavily armored sponges that take a little more effort to kill versus other enemies. I don't hate this, but I don't exactly care for it either. It changes things for sure, but I don't know. Reminds me of the Division for some reason. You also have extra stuff you could do like pick locks and crack safes by using codes that you can obtain via tuning radios. It's not exactly something groundbreaking, but the puzzles do at least keep things in the campaign interesting. Something else that I did at least kind of like was the return of the centralized hub. It's not like a new feature or anything, as something like this was in previous entries, but I think the idea of it is pretty neat. You can get to know your team here with little conversations and stuff that provide some backstory and what have you, though it's pretty much optional if you just want to get back into things quick. Additionally, and outside of chatting away with your buddies, there's also a little puzzle that you could solve as well to get some cash. That's actually another thing. This game pretty much has you collecting money to buy upgrades. Money can be collected from the previously mentioned safes and really just finding it throughout missions. You could spend it at the safe house to get perks and stuff. This is things like health bonus and faster reloads or aiming down the sight. I think that this is something that you might either love or hate. Personally, I like this feature since it feels like it gives you something to do. Though I have to admit, there were times where I found myself maybe over searching levels just to find cash, which probably ended up causing my playtime to get a bit more bloated than it normally would have just playing through a campaign. Speaking of which, I didn't hate the campaign or anything. I just don't think it's my favorite Call of Duty by any means, but I still had fun with it. There's some questionable levels here and there, like the one with the zombies, but all things considered, I didn't think it was like the worst thing in existence. I don't know how other people perceive some of the levels, but I think that some of the openness was pretty okay. Hunting season, for example, you had this relatively decent sized map with random objectives that you could do to obtain money and get additional support, like this chopper gunner that you could use in the following level too. I actually like this aspect, though I could see others maybe not feeling the same way due to how drastically different something like this is compared to the other Call of Duty games. The guns in the game feel okay too, but I have to admit, I had a huge preference towards sniper rifles. They made stuff like the previously mentioned level hunting season feel a lot more enjoyable too. I'd also like to mention that the game's violence feels a bit toned down compared to Treyarch's previous stuff. It's been a bit since I played Black Ops Cold War, so I can't speak for that, but coming right off of World at War, 6 feels filtered. That being said, there is some stuff that I'd still consider to be extreme violence, specifically when you're using the chopper gunner and see all of this decimation. It's like a bloodbath going on. There's also some level of destructible environments in the game as well. For example, in ground control, when we get the tank, we can pretty much blow up stuff in the environment in the same way as something like Battlefield. Outside of that, however, it's also worth mentioning that stuff in the environment will get torn up when you shoot at it too. It's pretty cool to see and is definitely a nice change of pace versus seeing a bunch of random bullet holes and everything. Music in the game is okay too. What I really liked was during sections where you're in the safe house when you hear this brief track that plays, which I believe is called Gone Rogue. It's chill and really helps the ambiance of the setting when you hear it. Voice acting performances are also good as well. There isn't really any over-the-top enthusiastic characters, but I think everything is still alright in this department. There wasn't a lot of heavily quotable speeches, like 90% of the stuff from Victor Reznov or anything, but I don't think I minded the interaction so much. And like I said, I like the idea of being able to chat with your team as a way to build relations. But beyond that, and in the Flawed department, I don't really have too many issues with Black Ops 6. I've seen some other people point to the zombies in the campaign as their issue. However, I don't know if this was something that really bothered me at all, since I just kind of chalked it up to whatever Case ended up inhaling, causing him to go crazy. Like, yeah, it was a little weird, but it didn't bug me too much. I think if anything, a game like this could have used optional side missions or something. Black Ops Cold War, for example, had a couple of side missions, but 6 doesn't have any of the sort, which is kind of a shame because I think doing side stuff to make a little more cash to buy upgrades would have been a nice addition. The game took me close to 8 hours to complete, and I think that was mainly because I spent a lot of time messing around in a few of the more open-ended levels and just kind of screwing around talking with the crew. So in closing, Black Ops 6 is a pretty good game. It isn't the best game in the series, series by any means, but I thought it was a fun little experience. I think there could always be more with the campaign, but for what it's worth, it's a fun little ride. And if the story alone isn't enough to satiate your needs, there's always zombies and the multiplayer to make up for it. Either way, the game is fine. I don't know if it justifies a full price buy, but hey, there's always the Game Pass option. But either way, I'm curious to see where the series goes from here with things like the Cradle and whatnot. And all things considered, when the time comes for another Black Ops game, I'll be sure to be there. Thank you all for watching. A real change of pace compared to what I've previously done, but I was glad to be able to play Black Ops 6, and I really hope you all enjoyed my take. Did you play Black Ops 6? And if so, did you like it? And what was your thoughts on stuff like the zombies in the campaign? I know some other people said it was kinda but I don't know. I'd like to hear your thoughts anyways, so feel free to leave a comment below and I'll be sure to read it. Also, if you like the video, please consider giving it a like and also subscribe too if you already haven't. We'll be back with more soon enough, so stay tuned. Until next time, peace out.